Welcome to the Bros of Gardening. I'm Mike Westphal, your host, with my co-hosts Daniel Van Dyke and Alex. Of course, will help guide us through this topic, which today is spring has arrived. Finally, spring is here.
Yay, spring.
We're very excited. Spring is, of course, one of the most popular times to get out in the garden and enjoy your spaces and start to think about what you want to do for the year. And so we're going to kind of dive into the whole topic there. How y'all doing?
I'm good. It's starting to feel like spring, not
Yes.
just literally, but figuratively as well. You know, we're getting ramped up, we're getting busy, and it always hits this time of year, but it's exciting, and everybody's excited for spring, which means they're, correlates to being excited about getting out into the landscape and getting working in the garden and stuff. So exciting time of year, and we're ready to roll.
Yeah. I mean, we just wrapped up our spring showcase, which is kind of our big kickoff here, in our retail stores. Most of our garden markets are opening up all over Hampton Roads. So if you live in the Hampton Roads area, you're definitely going to see us around, and come and check us out and get with our landscape design team and start to get some landscapes installed and start to come in and see us, because plants are blooming and we're getting some warm weather.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's kick things off. So I want to know what your predictions will be for what the most popular plants and shrubs are going to be for the season. What have you seen so far that kind of might give you a guess?
I mean, if I have anything to do with it, it's going to be Goshiki osmanthus. We all know that. But no, I mean, I think for spring, there's the old faithfuls, which, I mean, we've kind of, I always say spring's an interesting time of year because we talk about spring blooming camellias. Well, camellias have been blooming now, and, they're almost done. But then, a lot of spring annuals, or what I call spring annuals or warm season annuals and things like that are a little bit later into the season. So for me, when I talk about, what's going to be the most popular thing for spring, I'd be interested to hear Mike's answer, because he's being a little bit more retail centric, retail oriented. I think it's a little bit more seasonal. While on the landscape side of things, we plant things year round. I mean, I think the plant we probably plant more than anything is Sasanqua camellias, which are fall blooming camellias, which are not, I mean, they're nice dark evergreen right now, beautiful foliage, but they're not in bloom, and they won't be in bloom for another 6-7 months. So for us, I think, it's really still those tried and trues. But when we do think of spring, the big thing for us from a seasonal standpoint is annual color. And so we're not quite planting annuals yet. We're still about, probably, 4 weeks away or so from starting to plant those annuals. But like petunias, and then obviously you get a little bit later into spring. I mean, the big leaf begonias and things like that are some of my favorites. So I think those will always be popular in the landscape realm. They're popular, again, for a reason. I always say that. I say that a lot, I know. But your things like your hydrangeas and stuff, while they're not in bloom right now, they're our most popular plants for a reason. But when thinking about spring, I love the reblooming azaleas. You're getting, they're starting to open up now. You're getting all those encores. And then, there's other different reblooming azaleas as well. But then you also get another set again in the fall. So a lot of those things that are popular right now, I like the ones that give you some year-round interest as well, not just in the spring. So those would be some of mine that I would say would probably be the most popular for us from a landscape planting and planting standpoint that are more relevant in the spring.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I think, it takes a couple years, maybe 3, before you really see like something new kind of introduced, or even if it's like a category or whatever it might be. So like natives, you start to see a little bit of steam coming behind it, and you start to see more and more plants that you can choose from. So I think natives, which gained in popularity last year, will probably gain again a little bit more in popularity this year. Okay. And so natives, whether it's a true native or a native R, which is a cultivar of a native plant, I think you're going to see more of that terminology and certainly more of those plants that you're going to be able to have access to in the garden center. And then with foliage color, you started to see a lot of it last year with this kind of dark maroon, purple, almost black foliage. You saw, a trend, a few years ago with like the Raven ZZ plant, and house plants. Last year, we got a new introduction of a hydrangea that has a very, very dark foliage color with I think it was like a pink bloom. And then and don't quote me on any of these names, but there's an astilbe I think that we're getting this year that'll be really exciting. Astilbe is one of my all-time favorite plants. It's fern-like foliage, loves a little bit of shade, gets these really cool, like, feathery, kind of plumy flowers that come up on spikes, and kind of short-lived on the bloom time frame, but really interesting. Always like a green foliage with a white or pink bloom, purple bloom. This one has a dark foliage, really interesting looking, with a pink bloom. And I think it's called Dark Side of the Moon. Don't quote me on that name, but it'll be a very, very dark maroon foliage. So astilbe. So you're going to see that new kind of trend or leaf color, start to work its way into a lot of different things. I mean, we talk about loropetalum all the time. Yep. Loropetalum is used because it adds some different leaf color and texture to the landscape. And that's what the idea here is. Let's build on that. Let's keep to encourage, these types of plants being used around. And then the last thing, and I know I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, is edibles. I think edibles are going to be very, very popular this year. Mixing, blueberry bushes into your landscape just because you want to grow something edible that's healthy that you can control. And I love figs, so I'm certainly going to try and plant some more figs this year. I think there's lots of opportunities there. And I just taught a class on hedges, and I think privacy is big. And so Daniel hit the nail on the head. Tried and true is a great trend it's not a new plant by any means, but it's something that you should believe in, trust in, and having that trust that, hey, I know that this plant's been around for a while and people have had a lot of success with it. So it gives you that trust factor as you go into some new projects for the spring season.
All right. Some pretty good predictions. Now, Daniel, since spring has finally hit, what do you think the very first thing homeowners will be doing when they are outside?
So it kind of depends, for me, a lot of times, what that homeowner has done up until now is going to kind of dictate what they should do. If you've been, if you've kept up with your garden and you did all your leaf removal and all that kind of stuff throughout the fall and early winter season, then, you might be ready to start planting, cultivating, whatever the case may be. But if you still need to get out there, a lot of times what it is, it's cold. You don't like to get outside. And now that spring's here, you might need to do that initial spring cleanup. Everybody hears about spring cleaning. That holds true inside the house or inside the home, but also in the garden. And so I'd say the very first thing is get everything cleaned up. If you need to do any pruning, make sure it's the right time of year to do it, but do your pruning, especially, right now, everything's starting to really get going and everything. So get your pruning done, get your cleanup done, and get your garden ready for spring. Now, if you do want to start the planting, if you do have an area you want to plant, then I'd say get it planted as soon as possible. The ground's not frozen. We're not dealing with that anymore. We did have some periods of time this winter where it was pretty frozen, but now you can get out and get planted. And I always say, especially in our area, everywhere is different, depending on where you're listening from. But in the Tidewater area, the longer you can give your plants and the longer you can give that material before the summer heat hits, the better off it's going to be.
Yep.
It's one of the reasons we talk about fall being such a great time to plant. Well, really early spring, you have a lot of the same benefits. It's cool, so it's not as stressful for the plant material. You still have enough warmth where you're going to get hopefully acclimated. You'll get some root growth. You'll get some things moving like that. But the big thing is you want to take advantage of as much cooler temperatures before that summer heat hits so that they have a little bit of an established root system, they are acclimated, and that summer heat doesn't hit as quickly or as more as powerfully. So I think for me, I would say if you do have some plants or some areas you want to plant, don't wait. Go ahead and tackle them. It still feels a little cool at times. We still have those cold days mixed in here and there, but get out and get them planted because right now, you got a good 3 months before that really, really severe summer heat hits, and you want to take advantage of all 3 months of that. So don't wait till May to plant. You can plant in May. It's just going to be a little bit more work on you to get the plants watered in and get them established. So to make your life easier, keep your plants happier, let's get them planted now, especially your shrubs and even your perennials. Even if they're still dormant or just breaking dormancy, you can still get them planted, get the root balls in the ground and get them growing. And, you'll appreciate it a few months from now when that summer heat hits, and so will they.
Yep, definitely.
For sure. So, Mike, are there any plants people rush too early to get in the season that they should actually wait on?
It's a loaded question. It's like every plant, right?
Yeah.
Think of
I always
like
give you the best.
tomato plants. I mean, it seems like every year people are in here like the crack of, literally like this week, they're going to be like, where are the tomato plants? Well, it's still a little too early. So tomatoes, hibiscus, peppers. I mean, peppers really come after tomatoes. Basil, mandevilla. The two that I think, or the number one for sure, is vinca. I mean, Daniel knows that.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody. I mean, they call for landscape to come out and plant their vinca, and they come in and they say they want vinca. Vinca really in our neck of the woods in the Hampton Roads area is really May 1st.
Yeah.
I mean, you're
First of May.
not. So here we are in spring. We're starting to get warmer weather. You're starting to see blooming plants, and you're starting to maybe get into some annuals. You maybe see some petunias popping up, million bells. Some of these things that can take a little bit of that chilly weather that we might still experience. But vinca is one that needs heat and needs sun, and the longer the days get as we get warmer and warmer, that's the number one that people will start asking for the 1st of April all the way until May 1st. And we, while I wouldn't mind probably selling vinca, I want you to be successful. So it comes when fall comes at pansy time. It's like, it's the end of August and September hits and they're like, I'm on my pansies, when really October is the better time to plant them. So sometimes we'll get things in a little bit earlier. We always watch the weather. We're trying to, get it to the customers as quick as we possibly can, but we want them to be successful. And so that's why sometimes we say, hey, we're not doing this until we feel like the customer's going to have success with these plants that we're selling them. Lantana is another one. Lantana Miss Huff. We're fortunate enough to have one perennial lantana that we really believe in.
Yep.
And that is one that takes a little bit of time for the growers to get. And here's the tricky part about Lantana Miss Huff. If you have planted some and you think it's dead, give it some time. Because it'll take some time before that comes out of the ground. I mean, you could be looking at mid-May, almost maybe June 1st sometimes, depending on the weather. Depends on Mother Nature. But it will take a while before you even see that poke out of the ground again. So same thing, growing it in a pot. You can grow it in a heated greenhouse and get it to the customer sooner, but is it the right time to plant it? Are we still going to experience cold weather? So there's a lot of them. Like I said, loaded question, but vinca by far is the number one that just wait. Just be patient and do some other things. Like Daniel said, I mean, now's a great time to plant. You've got more time, especially some of your larger plant material like shrubs and trees and things like that.
they'll love it.
And even a lot of perennials. The earlier you can get them in the ground, the longer time frame you have till summer, just like he said. So work on those things. And then you can start to pop in some different things as we start to warm up a little bit. So get excited, but don't go if we're not selling it. If your local independent garden center isn't selling it, it's not the right time.
Exactly.
I can guarantee you. So just because you see it somewhere doesn't necessarily mean it's the right time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike's exactly right. I mean, I think annuals in general for us, everybody wants to color. They want to plant those annual pockets, the pansies a lot of times. But really, I mean, pansies still got a couple months in them. So, you don't have to rush. You still got some time on your pansies if you did do like a fall change out. But he made a great point. So one of the things that I always recommend doing too, and we're probably a little early, we're sitting right here at mid-March, but I always recommend people walk the landscape, do an assessment of your landscape, see how things made it through the winter. Like I said, we had a pretty cold stretch here in the Hampton Roads area, abnormally cold for a long period of time. So, so you want to make sure nothing got damaged in the landscape. And so, but we're probably still a little early to do that. I mean, I can't every year like clockwork, as soon as we start to get warm, people call, oh, my hostas didn't come back, my, whatever the case may be. And it's like, they're not up yet,
Just wait.
Especially they're like, oh, it's our 5th year. It's like for them to die, 5 years established for a perennial just up and die like that because the cold is pretty rare. So, but again, to go back to what you said people should be doing is go through and assess your landscape, see how it came through the winter, so that you're ready to go. If it is something like annual color, if it's something that you can tackle now, great, get out there and plant it.
Right.
But just do kind of an assessment, but give it some time too. We need some consistently warm weather. And I always say, my designers that I talk to, I always recommend that they do a walkthrough with their customers, especially on, larger planted jobs we always say we guarantee our plant material for that first year. So once you get through that first winter, through a couple growing seasons, I always recommend doing kind of that walkthrough. If we do have any warranty replacements we need to tackle, we will do it. But I always tell people, don't even make the appointment until probably April 15th, if not even a little bit later. Because like Mike was saying, some stuff doesn't even really pop, especially if it's a little bit cooler. Hopefully we'll have a great warm April, but if it's a cool April this year, it could take a little while for that stuff to pop. And you don't want to jump the gun and say, oh, this died, we need to replace it. Or even think, oh, I don't want to use this plant anymore because it didn't do well, when in reality it could have done just fine. We don't know yet. It's too early to tell. So that would be, that pretty much spot on, is give it some time, but tackle what you can now and get the process started at the very least.
Yeah, and be one of my favorite sayings is be preventative, not curative. So if you're not planting and you're like, okay, I'm just waiting a little bit, do some of that cleanup, do some of those things. But you can actually go out, because Daniel's right. It was a bit of a harsh winter in our area, and a lot of people got some really cold ice, different types of things that can damage some plants, cause, leaves to look a little off, especially on your broadleaf evergreens like camellias or boxwoods or things like that. So, start to look around at the garden. There's two things that I'd recommend, which is triple action. It's an organic spray. It's basically a combination of neem oil and pyrethrum, which is from chrysanthemum oil. So it's a very safe thing that you can spray. A lot of people use it. It's a great preventative because it's a fungicide, insecticide, and miticide. You can get it with a hose and attachment. It's one of my go-tos. Just spray it on all of your, ornamental shrubs and just kind of do a preventative measure. So that's a great thing that you can do if you're not planting initially. And then Super Thrive, my all-time go-to
Super Thrive,
product. You guys know I love Super Thrive because Daniel's right. Some plants got hurt this winter. We all heard the stories of, trees exploding in the cold. And, but really in our neck of the woods and for a majority of the U.S., plants are going to have a little bit of that winter damage. They're going to come out with so you give them a little bit of a boost rather than feeding them. A lot of people say it must need food. I need to feed it. They're stressed. They've had a long winter, a cold winter. So give them a minute. Super Thrive is a great way to just kind of help revitalize them. It's not a fertilizer, it's a vitamin supplement. So it's kind of just gets them out of a little bit of that winter shock that they might be experiencing and get them ready to roll for the spring. So those are two things you can do that aren't even really that hard and will benefit you, I think, this spring season.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off of that, you mentioned what should they be doing, when they get outside first. I would go ahead and pre-emerge. That's another great one. Yep. Pre-emerge your beds. A lot of those weed seeds are lying dormant right now, just waiting for that warmer temperature. That's our number one complaint. I always tell people we prep the beds, we till all the compost in. We've talked about it on the podcast before, but that does not differentiate from plant material that you want and weeds that are going to grow, against your will. So pre-emerge your beds now, so you're not breaking your back in a couple months when it's warming up and you're dealing with a lot of weed growth. Anything you can do to be preemptive, just like with the same concept as the triple action. You want to be as preemptive as possible. Yep. Get your pre-emergent down. That'll help you with some of that weed control moving forward.
Henbit and chickweed. You'll see customers just walking into the garden center with handfuls of henbit and chickweed. Yep. we could probably form a mountain with as much as that comes in. It's like, we know what that is. Purple flower is henbit, white flower is chickweed. You see it from afar and you're like, and it just pops up. And when it does, it's like, oh man, I wish I put down my pre-emergent. That's a great point.
Well, so now that we are in the spring season, our local area is famous for fluctuating temperatures. We know it. Is there any concern for gardens that when we have days like this?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You got to watch your weather. I was talking about tomatoes earlier. People want to plant their tomatoes. Well, you really don't want to plant them until after our frost date. So you got to know your frost date. You got to watch your temperatures. Can you get them in a little bit early? For sure. We're going to have tomatoes real soon. And it just depends. You got to watch the weather. So most weather forecasts 10 to 14 days. Well, might not say they're super reliable. At least it'll give you a good broad range of the temperature range that you might be expecting. So watch that. If it's April 1st and you see 2 good weeks of warm weather where temperatures don't get below 40 at night, then you can start a little bit early. But be cautious, be mindful of your zone and your frost date and what creates a frost. There's 3 things that Took me a long time to remember. So I'll just say them again, which the temperature has to be below 40, no wind, and no clouds. So you got to have clear skies, no wind, and below 40, and you'll get a frost. So watch for that. If you see that happen at night, you might wake up in the morning with a frost that a lot of plants won't die, but like basil, I mentioned. Basil, if you get it too early and you got it out there in that frost, it is not going to love it.
Yeah.
And you're going to see some browning on the leaves. You're probably going to have to do a cutback and let it reflush. So if you can move any of those, protect them. There's some things you can do to kind of help you through some of that time. So I'm not going to say don't get started, but be cautious for sure. I mean, you can never predict what Mother Nature's going to throw at you.
And that's basically what we're talking about is, be conscientious. And like Mike was saying, if we don't have it out around here, that's because it's not ready for it. And if we do get it in, just still being aware of it. We still pull stuff in overnight when we're going to get those cold nights. We want it to look nice and be ready for the, obviously for the customers. So we're conscientious of it still here. We have the greenhouses and the resources to do that. But at the same time, once you pot them in the ground or put them in the ground, you're not going to want to pull them up. So just be patient, get out, do what you can now, do some of those preventative measures, whether that's weed control, triple action, some of the things we mentioned on the podcast today. But be patient with some of the stuff that might be more tender because we want it to be successful for you, just like Mike said. We'd love to send out and sell everything we can, and I'd love to come out and design and plant all the annuals in the world for you. But the last thing we want to do is you do that investment of time and energy and money, and then it doesn't succeed. We want you to love gardening. We want you to get into gardening. We want you to keep wanting to do it. So the last thing we want you to do is get all excited about it, put in the time and energy and the resources, and then fail. So do what you can now, but be patient as well. Get the process started, but certainly be conscientious of it as you work through that because it is kind of a process.
All right. And we put out lots of great videos, and we talked about it in the winter when we were experiencing snow, like whether or not to knock snow off your plants and things like that. So pay attention to kind of what we're saying and watch some of our videos. I mean, we put out some great information. So if we see a cold snap coming, we'll put out something like, hey, can you put a bucket over your tomato plant because you planted a little bit early, or throw a sheet over some of your tender annuals if you plant a little bit early. We'll tell you some of those things. We sell, of course, frost cloth and protectants. So there's lots of things that you can do. Just, be cautious, be mindful, think through a little bit, plan. Absolutely. And there's lots of things you can do. There's always something to do in the landscape, in the yard. Year-round hobby. Yep. And it's never a bad time to buy a houseplant, No. There you go. You know what the temperature is going to be like inside.
Yeah. Well, most of the time. All right. Well, that's all for me. Do you guys have any closing remarks or anything?
I think that's it. Just excited for spring and really starting to feel like spring now and get the ball rolling here.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy time, so get out there. And next week, we're going to talk about getting a little bit more specific on avoiding certain types of plants, whether they're in your landscape or whatever. A little bit of a weird topic because, some of them might be plants that we sell. And so is it the right place?
Right.
Situational. Is it the wrong plant? Yep. So that'll be a great topic that we can kind of dive into. So thanks for listening to the Bros of Gardening, and we'll see you next week. And if you're watching on YouTube, definitely like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely.